Welcome to the 1 to 1 Million podcast, your weekly crypto alpha for those who never quit. Today, we're talking to Mike from Geodnet, a DePIN project that makes millions annually servicing the robotics/GPS space. And this is a project that actually uses crypto to bootstrap their network, but outside of that has nothing to do with crypto. They also take 100% of their profits and use it to buy back their own token, with 80% of those being burned and then the other 20% going to the Geodnet Foundation. And I'm personally a holder of the GEO token, so this is really me bringing you along for a conversation that I'm having to kind of form my own conviction about this project, about holding the GEO token, and maybe kind of dual, kind of going along with that, allowing you to see maybe the benefits of maybe running a GEOD miner. That's not something I currently personally do. I have tried things like that in the past. I know other people have tried things like that in the past. But it's something you can do to make money. I've heard really good things about it from people that do run them. You stick it on your roof, and you could earn and mine the GEO token. So maybe kind of learning how sustainable that is. Is that a good investment of your time and energy or not? And just overall forming there's just nothing like having a conversation when it comes to forming a conviction about a project. And that's the point of this. Let's dive in. Just to get started, what is Geodnet?
Geodnet is a hyper-precise positioning network. So it's a way to improve location accuracy. We're all familiar with GPS, but it basically is a way to improve location accuracy by about 100 times from 3-5 feet, couple of meters to a centimeter, the size of a thimble, essentially.
Okay, so I guess why is there a need for Geodnet? Because we have GPS, and I guess for the average person to understand, we have GPS. I have like a GPS in my phone. So what is the use case, or why do people need this?
Well, when you want to use GPS as a sensor to do things like robotics or automate things, the accuracy just becomes really important. If you're just trying to get roughly from A to B and using it to do some basic location finding, it's great. But when you're actually trying to control a system in real time, you have actually both an accuracy issue and also a reliability issue. And Geonet really addresses both of those. It improves the resiliency or the stability of the GPS signal, and then it vastly improves the accuracy, which allows you to do things like self-driving, have a drone land on its own, drone delivery, robotic control in farm fields, all these types of things where you need some precision and reliability. Geonet makes a huge difference and allows you to transform your GPS into sort of an AI type sensor.
I'm trying to understand it, and I'll just kind of say it back the way I'm seeing it. Is it like right now when I'll use my phone for GPS, or I'll use GPS, it's not super accurate. Like in general, it'll be like, hey, you're in this general area, but it's not like pinpointing me to the exact area I'm at. And what you're saying is there's a lot of use cases that need like an exact location. And that's really what Geodnet's for, is those use cases like self-driving, like you said, farming, robotics, different things like that.
That's right. That's right. And when you can use GPS in that context, it becomes an incredibly power efficient and extremely inexpensive way to do that. When you compare it to other techniques like cameras and LiDAR, which are great and are often used in these systems too. It's often a mixture of sensors. Those sensors are very expensive, very compute intensive, and then they have challenges with different types of weather conditions, daylight, whereas GPS as a sensor is very inexpensive, very low power, and if you can get the reliability and the accuracy up, it's just super convenient to use. It also gives you an absolute position. You can think of these things, even like our own human eyes, they kind of tell us relatively where we are, but we don't know exactly where we are. GPS is telling you exactly where you are, and then when you add Geonet, it's telling you exactly where you are to XYZ within 1 centimeter. And that is a very, very powerful capability. It also lets you build maps of the worlds. So your robots and your vehicles can first map out a space, and then they can go back to those same spaces with real precision every day, every time, even if the environment around them changes. Even if you rearrange the whole thing, it can still find that same location every time. So it's quite powerful, very inexpensive. I think that's one of the major benefits. It's very low power, so it's something that every developer and designer of a robot or a drone or any sort of automation system wants to incorporate into their device, but they need to have the accuracy and reliability to be able to use it. And that's where
I think you just said
in.
it. My next question was how accurate it was, and you said up to a centimeter?
Yeah, it's one centimeter. I've seen data come back from customers at the centimeter level all the time. It's a function of how far you are from the nearest Geonet station. So you're roughly you pick up about 1 centimeter of error for every 10 kilometers you are from the nearest Geonet reference station. And again, that error is the XYZ error. So we also massively improve vertical accuracy, which for a lot of things really matters as well. Getting a very good idea of where something is in Z space is quite useful.
And I guess what's your background that allowed you to create this? Like how this seems like a really complex thing and not maybe your average crypto project. It's very technically heavy. So what inspired you to do this and build this, and what's your background in this?
Yeah, so my background is in sensors, and my whole career has been spent in sensors for autonomy and robotics. Worked on this field for over 20 years now. What inspired me was the lack of availability of this type of service. So the idea has been around, and it's been in use in things like construction and survey and farming for a long time. It's been extremely expensive and also not very accessible. And with the integration of this type of technology into more dense chips, so smaller chip geometries, it's become very affordable to make the silicon part, but you need the network. And there hasn't been a good answer for a global, highly precise RTK network to use. You need the network, you need these stations in order to actually make this thing work. And so we looked at, could we do this with Web 2? And we realized that was going to be sort of billions of dollars of capital raise, and decided, hey, let's try it with the DePIN model. And that was about a little over 2 years ago. And since then, we've been able to build the world's largest network. And it's gone. I mean, I think it's been a really good choice to jump into the Web 3 ecosystem. But my personal background is all on the Web 2 side.
So I guess what makes like why is my phone not accurate? So my phone's going up to a satellite and it's trying to ping exactly where I'm at, but how come it doesn't know that?
Well, the signal travels a long ways from those satellites to your phone, and along the way it picks up errors, and those errors come from actually space weather. The ionosphere and the troposphere are actually electrically active, and they get distorted by the sun's magnetic field. So it's kind of a crazy phenomena, but it's constantly sort of creating variable delays in the signals, which then move your position around, move that little blue dot on your phone around, and kind of, if you were to plot the blue dot as a function of time, you'd see the blue dot move around a couple meters randomly. And that's what Geonet corrects. It takes all that out and puts you in a little pinpoint position, and it's called actually RTK fix. It's really fixing you, and that thing gives you the centimeter accuracy.
And is the way it's doing that is because you guys, I'm somewhat familiar with, I guess, from back in the day, helium. The idea is you guys have like your Geodnet miner like devices, and they're somehow like, how are they pinpointing the location? How does that actually work?
Okay, so back to the space weather. The space weather is distorting the signal for your phone equally in the same way it's distorting the signal for the reference station, the Geonet station that's, say, 20 kilometers away. And you're able to correlate those two and remove that component. It's an advanced form of differential GPS. So you can think of differential GPS as, hey, I'm just going to kind of take the measurement from the base station and the measurement of the phone, and I'm just going to subtract the two, and then I'm going to add the position of the base station back. So I know exactly where the base station is. I'm going to add that back, and now I'm going to get a better accuracy. That was the technique that was sort of first invented. It's very simple. It's called DGPS. Well, people further figured out, hey, I can actually use a more advanced technique that uses the carrier phase of the actual signals that come down from these different satellite systems. And that signal has a kind of a resolution in the millimeter level. And if I use this carrier phase and I do the same technique but resolve the position solution in the carrier phase domain, I can get then down to centimeter accuracy. So it is a pretty advanced mathematical thing, but the theory has been around for a while. What's been challenging is the cost. So the cost to implement the centimeter accurate GPS has been enormously expensive. I mean, just a few years ago, a receiver would cost you $10,000 plus, and you would need a very expensive subscription if you used a network, or you'd have to set up two of these things. You have to set up a base station manually. It just was impractically expensive for anything but the top end applications such as construction and survey, which are really the very tip top of the marketplace in terms of accuracy requirements. People started using it farming. Farming's a bit more cost sensitive, but still. It's been priced in the farming application still quite high for the most part, and so it's not been available for consumer products. And it's really the need for sort of two key ingredients: one, the cost of the silicon to come down, which it has, and two, a reference network that's available, that's modernized, that has all of the satellite signals to be available at low cost. And so how do you build this gigantic reference network of 10,000 plus stations? Well, crypto has offered an incredibly good way to get that built quickly, and now we have that. We're adding coverage in places where there are holes, but by and large, in every major city in the Western world you go to, you're going to have perfect Geonet coverage today.
And that's via DePIN. It's similar to, it's actually really similar to Airbnb and Uber for maybe a person who's not familiar with crypto. But the idea is that like your average person is contributing to this network of devices. And they're doing that to essentially kind of like people mine Bitcoin, they're mining the GEOD token via these devices. And so they're incentivized to go set these things up. And that creates this big, large network that allows you to get this really accurate GPS data.
That's exactly how it works. And it's a really good way to reuse if you own real estate and it has an internet connection and you have a clear sky of the view, then you can set up a station and you'll be able to, if you're the first in a hex, you'll be able to lock that hex so that you can retain sort of first mover rights in that hex for forever. And you can set that station up. It draws about 2 watts of power, so it's not a big electricity bill, and reuse your rooftop space, which is valuable for a long, long time. Potentially decades.
So you're getting this mining device. You're setting it up on your roof. You want a clear view to the sky, and that if you're like the first person in your hex, and I've seen that from helium miners back in the day. It's like basically your little area around you, like when you say your hex, that's like your little area around you. If you're the first person to basically set up one of these GEOD miners, you lock in some sort of special rewards from that?
Yeah, so if you set that station up and it performs well, so it gets a score of 98% for 30 days, then yes, you earn what we call our location NFT. And that means if other people come into that hex and set up stations, it doesn't affect your rewards. The people who come later into the hex will still be able to earn GEOD tokens, but they will be splitting them with each other and earn at a lesser rewards rate. And I think that's, so we get the coverage we want. We want an even network. One of the things we learned in from the early DePIN projects is if you don't manage the supply right, you end up with way too much supply in one area and not enough in another, and it doesn't create an even cohesive network. And an even cohesive, well-formed, well-structured, highly reliable network is what everyone will pay for. And so we've aligned our tokenomics very carefully to have it construct this very robust and reliable network that then the Web 2 users of robots, developers of drones can count on day after day after day to work with perfect reliability.
Let's talk about maybe the top earners, the top people setting up these devices. How much are they making?
Well, the rewards rate is currently at 24 GEOD per day if you have a perfectly installed token. The current token price is 30 cents, so it runs out, I guess, about a little over $6 a day. We do have a halving schedule, and obviously, if you set your station up in a way that it's underneath a tree, you're not going to earn that. So one of the nice things about the tokenomics is that it really incentivizes the proper setup so that we have data that's usable in the Web 2 marketplace to sell. And I think it's easy for us to tell, so we don't need a complicated system to validate that. We have an algorithm that looks at the raw satellite data. We sign that data on the device with the crypto chip, upload that, confirm all the metrics, and then we reward tokens. So if you've done it right, you'll get 24 tokens. If you're in an empty hex, or you're the first into a hex and you set it up and you do it correctly, you'll get 24 tokens per day. And then we have annually every June 30th.
Okay. So you're making 24. That I did the rough math. That's about $180 a month, which is really that's somebody's car payment. That's a lot of money for somebody setting one of these devices. But that's at current prices. So if Geodnet were to go even higher as a token, if it were to double, triple, then your rewards are doubling and tripling. Is that kind of how it works?
Yes, absolutely. You're earning the native GEOD currency, which is representative. It's sort of an embodiment. Every token you're earning is basically kind of a manifestation of a unit of the space weather data kind of compressed into a token, and you're stacking those. And I'd also emphasize, our customers are long-term customers. They want these stations to stay put for years and years. And I'm not really actually joking when I say decades. It's really something that once you set it up, it's very simple. And if it's stable and high quality, you can expect to be seeing tokens coming in from that for a long time, because the kind of use cases that are in this is a permanent piece of digital infrastructure that we're building for the world. It's not a sort of a temporary, oh, let's go get some data, and then 2 years from now this won't be needed. No, this is going to be needed for forever. So it's something that you really want to do a good job with the setup, and then it's a sort of set and forget thing, and you can expect it to be, be mining that location for a long time. Maybe eventually, the antenna has to be replaced if there's gets hit by lightning or something. But other than sort of crazy cases like that, you can expect the equipment and the location to be useful for a long time.
And you just buy this equipment from your guys' website, or is it?
Yeah, well, there's a set of 13 or so distributors you can buy it from. Then they're international, so you can get it quickly usually. Although lately there's been a lot of increase in the network size, so there's been typically a 4 to 8 week wait. But you can get it from a local distributor to make it very simple, quick shipping, customs already taken care of, all that stuff.
So I know the original Helium was kind of like the first project that I know of that kind of tried to do something like this. And their original problem with their original model was that not a lot of people used it and they weren't making any money. But I know it's different with you guys. I know you guys are making money. How much money are you guys making? Where does that come from? And who are these customers using this? Are they the use cases you laid out, or is it someone different?
Yeah, it's the use cases I laid out. We have over 30 enterprise customers. And we have customers who make GPS chips and want to use our correction service as sort of fundamental part of the chip architecture to improve architecture. We have customers that are in agriculture and are setting it up to do auto steer for tractors, which is a very super useful if you're in the farming field. We have makers of full robots, things that are like robotic mowers, robotic machines for agriculture and construction. We have lots of users in drones, thousands of drones flying every day using Geonet. So we have multiple different outlets of using the technology with drones. And now we've also gotten into some other Web3 projects. We support an HD mapping protocol called Rover. We've been working in a partnership with Wingbits to build out sort of a combination Geonet, ADSB network. Animoca Brands, we're starting to look at actually using this in gaming, things like Pokemon Go type of experiences where you can do augmented reality, metaverse applications. So it's a pretty broad reach. I'd say our major thrust and where we think we're going to get the biggest chunk of revenue in the future is actually sort of physical AI devices like drones and robots. And we've seen tremendous traction in that market, and we see a very strong forecast into the future.
I mean, I agree. I think I think everyone agrees robotics is kind of the next wave over this next decade. We're going to see a lot more use of robotics, and even you have companies like Tesla with their humanoid robots. Yep. Elon Musk is saying over the next 10 years you're going to have one of these in every house.
I think he's saying 10 per person, actually.
Yeah. It's going to be crazy, and these things will need to know where they're at. But I was going to go back to it. So you guys do make money. Around how much you guys making? Is it you're making?
Yeah, so we have the net ARR right now is I think a little over 3 million, right in that range. We're getting new subscribers every day. We have new business partners who are adding subscribers. We also have customers that we buy sort of bulk data off the network, what we call wholesale data. Both of those lines of sort of way people are subscribing to the service are growing very well. I think we've signed a lot of deals that are, in various phases of implementation. So a lot of things that are kind of already cooked to come. We take from the ARR, we take 80% of that. So all that is we'll buy back in tokens, but 80% of those tokens are actually permanently burned. So we're unique in a project that has a permanent burn, and so the total supply of Geonet tokens is actually decreasing over time. So there was an initial 1 billion tokens minted to support the mining pool, the team, the ecosystem, and investors, and a few other odds and ends. And then as the usage occurs, 80% of the tokens that are repurchased for the usage of the network are actually permanently burned. So we've burned over 1% of the total supply so far. And I think that is a strong kind of forcing function on the token itself. It's like there's like kind of a push and pull, right? You have supply being generated, which is creating opportunities for revenue. But at the same time, we have a stronger deflationary aspect than most protocols, because we've seen that oversupply has been a challenge in DePIN, and I think that you've got to kind of figure out a good way to keep the tokenomics in balance for the ecosystem to stay healthy. And so we've taken a pretty deflationary approach relative to other projects.
Okay, that was literally that was literally my next question, which was, how's the Geo token used? So you're saying right now, of your profits, 100% of it is used to buy back, and 80% of that's to burn?
80% is to burn, 20% return to the foundation.
That's crazy. Okay, so the more your guys' revenue scales up, the more you guys are buying more and more tokens.
That's right.
Which makes it sustainable, because you're also having to reward these tokens to actually create this network. So that's where you're striking that balance and making it a long-term, making it work long-term.
Indeed. And I think that when I think about DePIN protocols, I think you can't really overemphasize the importance of the tokenomics. You have such wild craziness in the Web3 crypto market. You really have to have a structure that's more robust than it needs to be to weather all these crazy storms, right? I think that's it's just super important.
What I love about this is you're using crypto, but you guys are not a crypto project. You guys are you're a GPS project. And that's, I think we're going to see more and more of that in crypto, where you're using crypto rails to do something, but you're not actually a DEX or a DeFi project or anything like that. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, we're starting to think of ourselves, by the way, as more of a robotics project, and we do see other services that we're going to be able to build on top of the network in collaboration with other protocols that are going to be hyper useful for more of the full solution stack in robotics. We've had a couple of our customers come to us and give us ideas of ways to use our network and to use the sort of decentralized nature of the network in even deeper ways than just correcting GPS, which is certainly very foundational. And so we've been implementing those. And so I think we're going to have a very strong roadmap within this robotics and drones, both ground robots and aerial robots. We even have one customer who does a little boat robot for mapping out rivers and things, and then actually figuring out where trash is and picking it up is kind of a very green, cool application. So all domains of mobility, I think, are relevant to Geonet. But we do see deepening our positioning, no pun intended, but deepening our tech stack in the robotics area very significantly over the coming year, and offering more capabilities to those customers.
So that kind of leads to my next question, which is, what's the total market size for something like this? Like, if you imagine in the future, like, how big could something like GEOD's revenues actually grow?
Yeah, so the current market is, depending on which market report you read, anywhere from like 20 billion down to like 3 billion, depending on how sort of narrow you segment it to the different services that use GNSS augmentation networks. There's open source, publicly available market research that we can edit into the podcast if you want, that shows some of this data as to where the augmentation services are used in terms of both construction and in terms of agriculture, and then in terms of sort of these future applications and robotics and drones and things. I wouldn't call them future because there's revenue from them today, but I mean where there's more forward growth. But there is publicly available open source market research on that. I think that from our point of view, from where we are today, for the next 10 years, there's just a tremendous amount of revenue growth available. So the exact market size is a little less important than our execution in terms of acquiring, customers to use the protocol and, delivering a really reliable product to those customers. Then if we can do those two things, the revenue is just going to grow continuously.
Geez. Okay. So even if it was anywhere in that ballpark, like 10 to 20 billion today, robotics is very small today, even though we have things like Roombas and stuff like that. But like, as far as like where it's going, and I think where everyone knows
there's 10 million drones shipped a year. I think the Roombas are in the several million units per year. A decent percentage of cars now have advanced ADAS systems, which benefit from things like GNSS correction. So actually, there's quite a lot of things that are really, you wouldn't call them full robots. They're not humanoids, but they are using robotic or automated capabilities in pretty advanced ways and devices. So there is actually a lot of that on the street today. And then obviously the roadmap, to more advanced devices, things like general robotics is very strong, and it's certainly a huge push from the whole tech industry.
And that's a really good point. And in that, like, there's a lot of maybe what most people wouldn't consider robots. You even mentioned a lot of the farming use cases and stuff. It's not going to look like a robot, C3PO, but it's still a robot out there and farming a field. What I meant as far as like it's small is that if you project out over the next 10 years, like the exponential growth, 10 years from now, they'll look back and say, hey, we only had that's a lot smaller than what we have today. I think everyone expects that over the next 10 years, robotics as a wide field is going to grow exponentially. And so that's what I mean. Like that market size, it's like the J curve of like tech adoption. We're hitting that curve point and it's about to go parabolic.
Right. Yeah, I think that's right. I think the key ingredients that why the growth is so good. You have technology trends where the sensor technology, be it the LiDAR, the camera, 3D radar, is really matured to a point where you can add the kinds of sensors you need for perception. You have the positioning technology there. You have the compute has come way down in cost. You had a real better understanding of how to develop these neural net models and how to train them. And so all the pieces are there to make these robots happen. And then you have a whole bunch of sort of exogenous factors around the economy and labor costs and inflation that are making the desire to automate processes much higher. And so that the combination of those two is really providing a very, very good tailwind for the development of these fully automated, robotic, autonomous, whatever you want to call them, systems from here as far as the eye can see. If you look back sort of 10 years ago, I was in the same field working on the same problems, and the challenge was that the technology wasn't ready. Like the idea was there, people wanted to do these things, but the sensors were too expensive, the compute wasn't available, the understanding of how to build these systems and train them wasn't there, how to scale them wasn't there, so you ended up with these extremely expensive experiments that didn't make it to production. That formula has really changed, and that's what's going to lead to, I think, the widespread adoption of these things from everything from consumer products all the way through very, complex systems that are doing the most complex work around.
Yeah, I think we're actually hitting a golden age of this because when you look at like some of Trump's policies around energy production, right? You need a lot of cheap, abundant energy for robotics and AI, right? And so that's become a priority in the U.S. We want to onshore manufacturing in the U.S. And that's going to be hard to do when we're used to paying a lot cheaper cost of goods because of the cheap labor abroad. And so if you want to do that here, one of the solutions to doing that is robotics. You could actually have a lot of manufacturing done via robotics, and that brings that manufacturing cost down, especially if you have cheap, abundant energy. And I think the third ingredient for robotics has been we've needed to cross like a certain threshold with AI and the ability for these things to kind of problem solve on their own. And so again, we're kind of coming to like a crossroads for all these three things where it really is going to enter, we really are going to enter like sort of this golden age for robotics in the U.S. and I think, in the world at large.
We are all in on that thesis and are going to be doing everything in the network's power to align our incentives and to align our ecosystem to make that happen faster and faster, to do that in a way that's permissionless and really creates an ecosystem here in the United States that's good for builders. Right now, if you look at smaller robots, things like drones and smaller robots, almost all of that production capacity is in China today. And that's something that's really, I think, the availability of the technology and things that we can help affect. And so we're investing in that to make a system where if I'm a developer, an engineer in Romania, and I want to build a robot that's specific to the needs of households in Romania, I can do that very effectively, and I can get that thing built and manufactured in Romania. That's really the way to go. So the services and this Geonet blockchain layer and this Web3 layer of technology that are decentralized can actually then sort of go into that robot and provide it with capabilities and make it much easier to get to market. As I said before, I think the challenge in robotics has been prior to today that the cost of development and the cost of the hardware was just too expensive to expect mass market adoption. And the best you could do would be come up with some sort of like little simple Roomba thing that kind of bounces around your house and maybe cleans your floors eventually. That's changed, right? Even the Roombas now, they have a LiDAR in them, they can scan, they can make a perfect map. It's because these technologies are available that you can make these advances. And if we put that into a decentralized permissionless layer, it really opens up it really evens the playing field and opens up a lot more capabilities to be developed across the globe. And I think we're going to see just tremendous adoption and development of these systems over the next 10 years.
What are you excited about coming up for Geodnet? Like any new releases or any kind of things in your roadmap that you're
Yeah, so I
really
think there are
excited about?
two very near-term things that we've been working on. One is already shipping. It's this GeoPulse and the app ecosystem that goes along with that. So this is a device that we call it the world's most accurate car navigation device. So it's a $149 device that comes pre-subscribed to Geonet that then provides your car centimeter accurate positioning. And we think you can build a lot of interesting fleet monitoring, augmented reality, driving apps, new ways to present information to drivers, better just turn-by-turn driving directions just for people who need to get to the destination every single time because their economy depends on it. It's a very small upgrade to their GPS system. It can update the GPS automatically on your phone, and that is a capability that we think is really exciting, and we're going to build a whole ecosystem around that. We're also working on a non-device oriented version for Android. Android has the raw data available. We need to do precise location, so we're working on an Android, a pure Android implementation, and you'll see more of that from us later in the year, so that app ecosystem. Another thing that's super exciting is this partnership that we have with the WingBits protocol that's doing flight tracking. Those devices integrate actually two protocols into one, so this is a sort of dual Geonet WingBits mining station. We're super excited to get those shipping here at the end of the month. I've been tracking planes from my rooftop at the same time as providing data to the Geonet network. So that's pretty exciting. That same capability with WingBits, we also think is going to be quite useful in drones. And that's something that we'll be talking more about later in the year. Drones is a very, very important business area for Geonet and I think the world in general. There's going to be a lot more use cases and utility. And we should not all think of drones as, lately I think a lot of people jump to the idea that drones are for military use. They do have application in the DoD for sure, but there's just a whole lot more that they can do in a civilian ways that benefit the economy, whether it's drone delivery, whether it's a simple security system for your home, whether it's recording your kid's soccer game. There's just more and more utility that's being developed in these drones, and they're getting less and less expensive and more automated and easy to use. So we have a big roadmap around drones. We have a big roadmap around kind of land vehicle-based robotics, from everything from supporting the automotive ecosystem, but also to smaller ground robots like security robots and robotic mowers, these small delivery robots. All of that, I think, is really well aligned to Geonet and a huge part of our forward roadmap.
You always hear these things on X and kind of in the space that like there's so many tokens in crypto and now you can never know what project you invest in, kind of this nonsense. And I like to kind of point out the fact that like for one, 99.999% of those are meme coins. It's so easy to launch a meme coin today. It's easy as making a post on Facebook. So if you exclude those and then you exclude all the dead tokens and then you exclude all the like low effort vaporware projects, the amount of like projects building like real innovation in the space or like solid teams, like even just attempting startups, is actually really, really small. It's actually really, really small. And I think in a market where people are flooded with just so many projects, you have to have a way to filter. You have to have a way to filter, and that's via fundamentals. And that eventually leads, in my opinion, to projects like Geodnet, where you get these things like, hey, we're really building. Guess what? It's actually hard to build a real business. It's not as easy as launching a meme coin and just writing a name in and uploading a picture. And so that becomes a natural filter. And so I think I get really excited about projects like this because of that. I think that's where the space is going. One day you will have thousands upon thousands of real projects building in the space, but today is not the day. It's probably less than 2,000. So it's really great to have you on, and really great to dive into all this and learn about what you're building and moving forward the crypto space, but also moving forward GPS, robotics, and all of that.
Yeah, indeed. I thank you, Jesse, for having me. I really appreciate the good quality content and thought that goes into the community. I think it's really important for people to see that crypto does have projects that are, and other DePIN projects as well, that are really truly building very integrated, very innovative digital infrastructure that can power the future. I think that's where crypto and Web3 really shines. The whole read, write, own thing is just a super powerful mechanism to create a better future for everybody. And that's what fires me up about Geonet.
All right, so I just finished my podcast with Mike. Obviously, killer guest. Really helps having a podcast mic, but also he's just really good at answering questions and delivering the details. You can tell that he's done quite a few podcasts before in the past. So yeah, it just went really well. My overall takeaway after talking directly with Mike on the GEOD token is, for one, even though in the intro I talked about how they do the buyback and burn, I actually didn't know that before the podcast. So I actually record the intro for a podcast after I do the episode, just to kind of summarize it. But when I was actually listening to the podcast, that was the first time I learned and heard that they did the buyback and burn. So that was actually a surprise to me and a pretty cool thing. I definitely didn't know they did 100% of their revenue. That's crazy. They don't burn 100%. They burn 80%, but still that's crazy and a huge up for like token utility and sustainability in the long term, because it's kind of hard with a model like this where you're giving out all these tokens. You kind of have to figure out a way to increase the value of the token, or at least maintain the value of that token. And so buying back the tokens with the revenue is a good way to kind of balance that out. I also found myself in the middle of this episode slightly tempted to get some geode miners, especially the idea about locking in your hex first and like kind of maintaining those the earning potential. I thought that was pretty cool. $160 a month is actually pretty good for one of these devices, especially if you consider that the token could go higher. And I guess my big takeaway was that I can see his entire thesis on like, hey, robotics is going to get a lot bigger. Even if it didn't get a lot bigger, just the market size today, they have substantial room to grow with something like this. But I deeply believe exactly what he's saying, that the robotics is going to get massively bigger, not like kind of bigger. It's not like it's going to just double. It's like going to compound massively bigger. So we're going to see this huge uptick of like autonomous cars, like humanoid robots, delivery drones, all these kind of things. Is going to get just out of control. Okay, out of control. And so I was like fully bought into his entire thesis behind it. And I don't know. I guess I left the conversation a lot more bullish on the GEOD token. I hold some, a pretty good amount. I'd say I consider it like somewhere around mid conviction, like lower mid conviction holding. But I feel like after talking to him, I want to add a lot more GEOD tokens. Maybe put it into like an either upper mid conviction kind of holding, or maybe even like the high conviction category. Being honest, after hearing what he had to say. Just because I think the GEOD token right now is like a $60 million market cap or something. Let me look it up right now. GEOD token right now is sitting around $60 million in market cap. Fully diluted value, it's like close to 300 million, but that's from their mining rewards. So those should pay out over a really, really long time period. Looking at the chart, this thing's basically been up only since 2023. I mean, it is just doing really, really good. Probably a good portion of that is that they buy back their own token. Looking at their unlock schedule, they do have some pretty decent unlocks happening. Specifically, it looks like going into 2026, there's a decent amount of investor unlocks happening, but nothing so insane or scary that it would like indefinitely scare me away from buying the token. And in fact, it feels like, especially if they're buying back with the revenues, that could get eaten up pretty quick. And this feels like a project that I as an investor, you could hold long term. It's not like another layer 2 or another DEX or something like that, where it's like kind of one of those things you want to get out of as quick as possible. This is something that should ramp up, and it's inherently very different and maybe a nice thing to have in your portfolio. So in that vein, maybe it should have some more staying power. But yeah, sitting at $60 million in market cap, definitely one where I feel like I want to accumulate more. And you're just kind of hearing my own thoughts and me kind of processing this, thinking it through after doing the podcast. So $60 million market cap, if that were to 10x, that's as 600 million. If it were to 100x, that's just $6 billion in market cap, which I feel like Helium went higher than that, or like somewhere around that last cycle. And Helium didn't have pretty much any customers. They weren't making anything. At least their first model didn't. Their new one has actually been pretty decent with their 5G network, but their first one was like for like those scooters that you see around like big cities, but nobody really used it. So yeah, max market cap of Helium last cycle was around $5 billion in market cap. So yeah, at least we have an example of like something that has done 100x before in the past, similar to something like Geode. Not saying that it will. That's obviously not investment advice. That's just me thinking through. There's a lot of upside potential. You also have unlocks, so maybe that kind of plays into it, and maybe it doesn't hit quite that. Yeah, I guess my takeaway is I'm more bullish on the Geo token. I'm probably, after I record this, going to go buy more of the Geo token. And as I've talked about many, many times, there are not that many projects like this in crypto. Everyone keeps saying there's so many tokens. But again, most of those tokens are low effort tokens that nobody's going to buy, or they're dead tokens, or they're memes, etc. Real teams, real businesses in building in crypto is like minuscule, so small, so tiny. And so those projects, I think, carry a premium, and there's not a lot of them. So when I think of all season, I think of those projects, and those are the ones that are going to go up. And I mean, this feels like this could be a great candidate for something like that. As always, now this was investment advice. Now this was me telling you to buy GEOD or to not buy GEOD or invest in anything. Crypto's risky, GEOD's risky, everything's risky. Walking down the street is risky. Everything is risky. Okay, so you got to be an adult and make your own, decisions. And then when you make those decisions, own those decisions, and don't come complaining to me if you lose money, because you know what? I'm wrong sometimes. I will definitely get it wrong sometimes. I'll get it wrong for many years after this, because you know what? There is no investor that doesn't get things wrong. You just got to get more things right than you get wrong, and then you can make money. And I've been pretty good at that. But I'll tell you what, that not everything I invest money into goes straight up. That would be a magical power that would make me substantially, more wealthy than I am today, that I don't have. So anyway, not investment advice, not your dad, not your financial advisor, none of those things. Always do your own research, and have a good rest of your week.